According to prosecutors, the student listed cocaine, Molly, and psychedelic mushrooms for sale, but allegedly offered other drugs upon special request. When Howard appeared in court on Tuesday, he pleaded not guilty. If convicted, he could face more than 60 years in prison.
Correspondent Gio Benitez. Rain and snow pounding the mountains of Southern California. The snow level as low as 1,500 feet in some areas, bringing rare snowfalls to areas like Palmdale. Jeff Scott, California News.
You're in the front yard, shovel in hand, about to dig, when a thought crosses your mind.
Was I supposed to call 811 before I start digging? Nah, that's just for excavator dudes.
No, dude, it's for homeowners too. Before starting any digging project, call 811 2 working days in advance to get all underground lines marked for free, because natural gas lines and other utilities can be buried anywhere.
Got it. Thanks, deep-voiced narrator.
You're welcome, dude. Brought to you by Southwest Gas.
Hi, I'm Bruce Fabrizio, inventor of Simple Green. Like you, I'm a big sports enthusiast, and I want my gear to shine like new. That's why it's cleaned with Simple Green, the concentrated cleaner that's perfect for making your auto, RV, cycling, boating, and other sporting equipment look like new again. Try it today. If you're not 100% satisfied, I'll give you your money back. Visit us at simplegreen.com.
Simple Green, Simple Green.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Actor Jussie Smollett is out on bond after appearing before a judge for the first time. Chicago police accused him of filing a false report when he told authorities he was attacked and beaten in a racist and homophobic attack. Reverend Shane Harris said what Smollett allegedly did is a humiliation to people of color, especially during Black History Month.
A month where we should be remembering those who actually fought, who actually stood through the beatings and the spit on and the humiliation. A month where we are reflecting on those ancestors who stood for something.
Longtime Trump ally Roger Stone is now under a full federal gag order. Judge Amy Berman Jackson told Stone today that he can make no further public comments or media posts about his case or special counsel Robert Mueller. A federal judge is denying bail for the Coast Guard officer accused of plotting a major domestic terror attack. Today's ruling gives the U.S. government more time to make its case against Lieutenant Christopher Hasson. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
An Australian vegan is banning all meat eaters from her wedding. Here's Mark Mayfield with the details.
In a viral post on a vegan Facebook group page, the woman said she didn't invite some family members because she and her partner don't want to host murderers. The uninvited family members reportedly included her mother and 2 cousins who were initially going to be her bridesmaids. The woman eventually deleted her post. Mark Mayfield, NBC News Radio.
Hi everyone, it's Yanitza Munoz from the publications Maxim, FHM, and Sports Illustrated. So being a model, I have to work out a lot. It's tough staying in shape, especially keeping my abs. Until I discovered TC1 Gel. TC1 Gel is a thermogenic gel that you rub on your waist 15 minutes before exercising. Then simply put on the TC1 sweat belt and start your workout. You'll sweat like crazy and feel the burn. It focuses on boosting circulation, increasing perspiration. It activates body heat, reduces muscle fatigue, and burns off more calories. Get your TC1 Gel now. Go to tc1gel.com and use the code RADIO30 for 30% off discount on this amazing product. tc1gel.com and get your abs back or just get in shape. Follow their Instagram at TC1Gel.
If you're looking for a full or part-time sales position and you have radio, TV, or print media experience, KCAA has a great opportunity waiting for you that pays the highest commissions in the market. KCAA is the only station in the IE that broadcasts on 3 frequencies, so advertisers receive 3 ads for 1 low rate. This makes KCAA a must-buy for every local business. If you're interested in a sales position with us, email ceo@kcaaradio.com.
Miss your favorite show? Download the podcast at kcaaradio.com.
Live from
the NBC News radio broadcasting studio of KCAA 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, located in beautiful, sunny, and cold California. Welcome to the Water Zone Show tonight. I'm here, Rob Starr, along with Mr. Chris Davies, our other host, and tonight we have a special guest host, and she's a wonderful person. Actually, everybody on our show seems to be really wonderful, but anyway, this is Miss Kathy Kellogg Johnson, and she is the chairman, or chairwoman, to be politically correct, of Kellogg's Garden Products, and they're found everywhere in every major store you can figure out. So, welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Robert. I think it's chairperson.
Chairperson?
Chairperson.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
the correct way to go. That's the correct
I'm sorry.
And really, I don't mind chairman. That's fine.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not the most politically correct person in the world, so I try. Anyway, it's great to be here. It's nice to see the rain.
It's a soaking Southern California today.
And snow in Las Vegas, snow in Los Angeles, snow in Elsinore. Amazing.
And there was snow in Pasadena today.
Oh, wow. And it should be Christmas.
Down to about 1,000 feet, I think, as came down the mountainside.
Wow. Well, we should find out what's going on a little north of here and bring on Miss Chris Austin, who is the purveyor of Maven's Notebook. Chris, welcome.
Good evening, guys. How you doing?
We be fine. How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, I finally made it to Fresno.
Oh, you're up there. Good.
Fresno. Yeah, I was snowed in Southern California.
Yeah.
I couldn't go. When does that happen? So, but I finally got to get over the pass. So yes, I'm in beautiful Fresno, where tomorrow I will be attending an event where we will be talking about water in the San Joaquin Valley. So, and with a focus, of course, on groundwater, because there's some big issues here. So
absolutely. Oh, I heard. No, go ahead. I heard.
And also, you know, DWR put out a little update today that the water level in Lake Oroville is about 40 feet below where it would need for the new spillway to be used. So far, we're not having to use the new spillway. So it'll be quite interesting to see what happens when it does.
As long as they don't dump the water into the bay.
The water, well, it's a long ways to go.
Yeah, that is a long way.
To the bay.
I know, but I just hate to see them do that all the time when they tell us we have a water shortage and they don't take it somewhere else. But that's me.
Well, yeah, but also, too, the bay has an ecosystem, and it needs some fresh water, too.
Yeah.
You know, shrimp and oysters and things, you know.
Yeah, but it rains. It rains in the bay. So they're getting a replenishment of water. But anyway, that's a discussion for another time.
So, Chris, the long-range weather says March is going to be wet again. So when it doesn't rain and we don't get precipitation November, December, January, February, and it does rain in March, we call it a March miracle. What if we've been wet already and it rains a lot in March? What do we call March?
March Madness.
Yeah, well, after a rainy February, some people are going to be grumbling, you know, going back to that song, that ELO song, Mr. Blue Sky. Where are you?
Well, who's the guy that wrote that song? You would know this, Chris. Either one of you, Chris's. You know, It Never Rains in California?
It never rains in Southern California.
It never rains in Southern California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Girl, don't you worry.
Yeah, well, supposedly it doesn't snow there either, but, you know, we actually had snow in Santa Clarita, by the way. I have a picture of my yard with some snow on it. I think it was kind of more like hail, but it stuck. But anyways, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to tell you, we had big news in the water world last week. Governor Newsom has said that he does not support 2 Delta tunnels, only one. He supports a 1-tunnel option. So this has all the water wonks on the surface going, oh, great, but underneath the surface, everyone's sort of scratching their heads and says, well, you know, so now what? Do we need another environmental document? And, you know, and I think there's also some people looking at this, trying to figure out if the governor can interject into this process at this time. So it's going to be interesting to see. And the other big thing that he did is he made some changes at the State Water Board. ousting Felicia Marcus, who has been there for, I suppose, 6-7 years, I think.
Yeah.
And she was the chair, and he ousted her. He put another person that's already seated on the board, Joaquin Esquivel. He made him chair of the board, and so then there was one seat open, and he gave that seat, or he appointed in that seat, a woman named Laurel Firestone with the Community Water Center, which is an organization in the Central Valley that advocates for clean water for the communities that don't have it.
Right.
Yeah, we know her.
She's a lawyer, so she's real smart, and, she certainly has, qualifications to do this job. So I'm thinking, it looks pretty obvious that Newsom is going to make cleaning up the drinking water in the Central Valley one of his major goals.
Oh, that's good, because I went on a rant about that.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely done that. Where he stands on other stuff, we're still going to have to sort of wait and see. He hasn't appointed a water policy advisor, so, I think there's, shock. I can't believe this, but he may have other things. There might be other things in the state.
Well, you got our vote.
I think there's nothing more important than water, but, other people may want some freeways or, healthcare.
Hey, well, we're not going to do the train, or at least the whole train.
Oh, yeah, well, we're fighting over the train, but that's another story.
I'll just get off the track for a second here, but no, but anyway, I think that the fact that they're suing the administration of Trump, that I think a lot of money that was geared for California may not come.
It's a mess.
But that's politics. So I'll get back on the train. So, anywho,
but lots of snow, lots of rain, lots of precipitation. So the reservoirs are looking pretty good. They came out with the water allocation for the Central Valley project, which is primarily ag contractors. There are some cities involved, and it looks pretty good for just about everybody except the Westlands Water District, which is this very large agricultural district around the Fresno area on the west side of the valley. So they're not next to the Sierras. They're more towards the Coast Range.
They're between 99 and 5. All that land, yeah.
Yeah, but more off to the west, not to the east.
Right.
And that was some of the very last land in the Central Valley to come into production. And about in the 1960s, I think, when they built San Luis Reservoir. And so they're sort of like the junior guys, although they really hate anyone implying that their rights are junior, but they're the last guys in. So, the way it kind of works in this priority system that we have, but they won't let you say that. They'll argue with you about that. But so they're only getting 35%, so they're very unhappy. They're very mad about that. And it's a little bit of a mystery to me, in a sense, because, while Shasta is low, it's slightly it's like 74% capacity, but I believe, if I remember, that's like 104% of its historical average at this time of the year, because Shasta has flood control responsibilities, so they have to make sure there's always space behind the dam for if they get a big storm and a lot of runoff into the reservoir. So they have to keep the reservoir down at this time of year. So that looks to me pretty good. In San Luis Reservoir, which is the one that's outside of Los Banos, that one was almost full. I think 94% of capacity. And San Luis has it's what they call an off stream reservoir, so it's not on a river.
Right.
They pump water in and out of it, so it has no flood control responsibility, so they can fill that thing up.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, we had their general manager on a little while back, a couple months back, on with Ingy on the show, and that was pretty interesting of what they do.
Yeah, that was on the November Ag Show.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I but I'm not the one that determines the allocation, and I'm sure they have all these formulas and they have some reason for it, but Westlands is not happy. And the State Water Project contractors got a bump up. I think they got up to 45%. But the way DWR works is they start out low and they just add to that allocation as precipitation warrants.
Yep.
It's harder for the ag contractors because these farmers need to be planting their seeds and their crops and buying the seeds and getting ready and getting things into shape when the growing season comes. So if they don't know how much water they're going to get, that's very difficult for them. How can they plan? And if that allocation comes too late, they may not be able to get the crop in the ground.
Yeah, they'll miss the time. Hey, in your view, and in the last year, there's been a lot of changes to the Department of Water Resources. Different people at the heads. Do you think the latest person is going to be a sticker, meaning she's going to be there?
I think Carla Namath. I think she's qualified to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
I really have, I don't know, because she's just 8 months there,
right.
And so I don't know, I don't know how political that position is. I don't think it's quite as political as, say, the State Water Board.
Mm-hmm.
They have responsibilities, but they're not. The State Water Board is like a regulatory agency, so they're like bringing the hammer down kind of thing. DWR is not like that. They do have some new regulatory duties with implementation of the Groundwater Management Act. But so it's kind of hard for me to predict. To be honest, I think it's kind of cool that we have a woman in charge, and there's actually a number of women in the upper leadership at DWR. So I think that's kind of cool, and I think she's doing a good job. So I'd like to see her stay around, but we'd have to, I don't get to make that decision.
No, I certainly want to see some consistency. I mean, there was like three changes in about a year and a half, and that makes it a bit. I did hear yesterday. Do you remember David Nahai?
Oh yes.
He used to be for LADWP, and he's an attorney. And then when he left, he was hired back as a consultant when Marcy Edwards was there. And I heard him the other day getting interviewed, and I sort of got the notion that he's interested in going back and being more in the water business, with having more authority instead of just now going back into his legal practice with water.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I really like him.
Yeah.
And I went to a conference. It was an Israel, California water conference.
Yeah, you and I. Well, I didn't know you then, but we were at that event that was in Beverly Hills.
Yes. And he gave this speech, and he talked about how private companies can work with public agencies, or more importantly, how hard it is. And I know this personally because I came from the business world, and now I walk in this agency nonprofit world. The money flows so differently and for such totally different reasons. It to a business person, none of this stuff makes sense. And so I just sat there and chuckled. Oh yeah, I know that one. Oh yeah, And I really wanted to meet him, but I didn't get a chance. So I sent him an email, and I said, I really wish I had the opportunity to meet you at the Israel, California conference. And he invited me down to meet him at his office. So I went, and I had a lovely hour with him.
He's very knowledgeable person, I'll tell you that, and he's pretty dynamic.
Yes, I'd love to see him get back involved. You know, I think he was at the head of DWR at kind of a sticky time when they were having some problems out in the Owens Valley, and I think he kind of did a really good job with sort of getting things smoothed over. And then, you know, pluck out, he's gone, and in comes somebody else that kind of went through and changed a whole bunch of stuff back to the way it was, and all the animosity kind of returned. So it was, you know, I didn't quite get that, you know. But I think it must be hard to be the head of DWP.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I think to be the head of anything.
We are, yeah.
It's
yeah,
not...
but, you know, back in the day, like, I grew up in Reno, and my mom hated Sierra Pacific Power. They were like this investor-owned utility, and she, as far as she was concerned, they're just, you know, stealing from her, you know, charging her so much for the essential resource. So she just hated them. And I thought, wow, investor-owned utilities are bad. Well, municipal ones must be good. And, you know, Sacramento people are kind of okay with their municipal utility, but dang, you go to L.A., I mean, it must be written in your property deed. Unless you work for DWP, you must hate DWP. Yeah. you must fight them at every level. You must curse them. You know,
yeah.
I don't know. Whoever sits in that position has a tough position.
Yeah, that's why I would never run for those things or even take a job in that industry or any of that, because I just don't want the grief. I want to go home and sleep at night. And I don't want to be in the newspapers every day either. You know, and they hound you. They follow you everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
So
sometimes it's bad. Harassment almost sometimes, you know.
Absolutely. Hey, we're up against our break, and so we're going to go to commercial. Excuse me. And Chris, we really appreciate you coming on, and I want you to stay warm, have fun in Fresno. I don't know what you can do at night there, but is there anything to do in Fresno? I stayed overnight one time, but there was nothing to do. So,
Fresburg.
Yes, stay out of the snow.
Fresburg?
Yeah. It's cold.
Oh, yes.
Fresburg. And Baker's Acres for Bakersfield.
Got it.
Where did we get him from? He's a good man. Well,
Chris, you have a good week.
You too. Take care, guys.
And we'll talk to you next week. All right, we're going to take a little break here from the Water Zone with Chris and Rob and our special host, Miss Kathy Kellogg-Johnson, and we'll be back in a moment with our next guest. So stick around. We're going to talk slime.
Slime. Algae.
Algae.
Algae and slime.
Algae and slime.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292 FQ Riverside, and K293 CF Moreno Valley.
If you knew there was a pipe cement that works better than the one you're currently using, is better for you and the environment, and costs the same or less, would you buy it? Oh, no-brainer, right? Weldon, the trusted leader in solvent cements for over 60 years, is pleased to introduce a new line of solvent cements that does all that. Introducing the Eco Series line of solvent cements for PVC piping systems. Not only does it work great and set fast, it also has 30% lower solvent emissions and less smelly fumes, a better workplace environment when you're installing pipes. But don't just take our word for it. Eco Series products are the only solvent cements that are Green Seal certified for environmental innovation for effective performance, improved working conditions, and for use with potable water. Now available in a medium-bodied fast-setting blue formula, 905 Eco, and a regular-bodied fast-setting clear formula, 900 Eco. Pick up a can today from your local distributor and see, smell, and feel the difference, just like Joe Sweat, president of Sunrise Irrigation, did. He said, after using Weldon's 905 Eco, we immediately noticed the application was smooth and there was noticeably less odor than other blue solvent cements on the market. The guys love it. To learn more about Eco Solvent Cements from Weldon, visit the website at www.weldon.com or call the Technical Service Hotline at 877-477-8327. That's 877-477-8327.
Time to take a water break and talk some water. Irrigation. Such a refreshing topic. As more and more markets face water restrictions, your customers may be hungry, or should I say thirsty? for water-saving products? For new installations, add options like drip irrigation, controllers that respond to weather data, pressure regulating heads, or heads with check valves. They all provide easy ways to differentiate your bids and win more jobs. Or for an extra stream of revenue, offer existing customers upgrades like high-efficiency nozzles, rotary nozzles, or Wi-Fi based controllers. Because when you help your customers save water, you make a world of difference for the earth and your bottom line at the same time. We'll drink to that.
Hey, welcome back to the second half of the Water Zone on a wonderful rainy and snowy day in Southern California. It's pretty interesting. Anyway, we got a great guest. I'm very excited actually to have this person on. I learned a lot by researching this topic, and it's going to be a great discussion. We have a lady named Dr. Rebecca White, and she is the Vice President of Operations for Qualitas Health. It's a Houston-based food and nutrition company making algae-based products. She's also on the board of directors for the Algae Biomass Organization and serves as their communication committee chair. Dr. White has over 10 years' experience in the algae industry, having previously worked at Sapphire Energy. And at Sapphire, she advanced algae biomass production efforts that successfully demonstrated the commercial viability of producing algae to produce fuels and other high-value products. So we'd like to welcome Dr. White to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us. Hey, I'm looking forward to this. I invited one of our friends, Ms. Kathy Keller-Johnson, who's the chairperson. I have to be politically correct here. At first I said chairwoman, chairman is a political. Anyway, so I got to get it right here. Anyway, she's in charge of a company called Kellogg's Garden Products, and so I thought bringing somebody of that caliber to the show along with you will probably do better than just me and Chris, because we're in another world anyway. So
yeah, maybe.
Chris is hydraulics, I'm electronics and physics, so we need somebody to balance the show out for us. But anyway, can you give us a little background about yourself and how you chose, what made you go into slime and algae?
Well, most algae isn't slime, although that's the kind that a lot of people are familiar with, the stuff that grows in your dog bowls and aquariums and swimming pools. I got interested in algae after doing a postdoc at the Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla, California, because of the amazing oceanography programs that they have there in La Jolla, both at UCSD and at Scripps Institute of Oceanography. And the wide variety and the huge potential of the different kinds of algae that are out there.
Well, are you not to be personal? You worked out here in California. Are you a Southern California girl, but you have a Texas accent, or?
Well, I was temporarily a Southern California girl with a Texas accent. I'm a Texas native, and went out there, as I said, to do my postdoc, and got into the algae industry at Sapphire Energy, and have made my way back to Texas now.
Excellent.
Wonderful. And this is Kathy. Nice to meet you, Rebecca.
Nice to meet you, Kathy.
So kind of two questions. What is Qualitas Health? Maybe I'm pronouncing it right. And then the Algae Biomass Organization. Tell us both about your company and this organization.
I'd love to. So Qualitas Health is a company that was founded in 2012 with the idea that we could make nutrition products from algae, and specifically that there is a need for renewable omega-3s. So most of the omega-3s that people know in the world are fish oil and krill oil, and there are problems with continuing to get our omega-3s from the ocean and the damage that does to the marine ecosystems, and for krill in particular. And so the idea was, well, fish and krill don't get their omega-3s. They don't make them on their own. They get them from the algae that they eat, so why not just grow the algae and skip the fish, if you will, and be able to produce these products on land in the interior of continents instead of disrupting our marine ecosystem. And so that's what Qualitas was founded on. From there, we have our omega-3 products, but we're also making protein products. So in a lot of places in the world, protein is in short supply, and it turns out that the algae that we grow, in addition to making an essential omega-3, also makes very good protein. So it has all the amino acids. It's a complete protein. And it is in particular very good compared to the FAO standards for protein nutrition. So that's Qualitas. The Algae Biomass Organization is the largest trade organization for algae companies in the world. We do have some compatriot organizations. There's a European version as well. But basically, we're a gathering place for anybody that's interested in algae, but in particular for companies and researchers that are working on algae, that are producing algae, or that are using algae in their products to gather and talk about the things that are happening. What are the breakthroughs in technology that are going on? Where can we cross over with other industries like carbon capture, things like that? And then the biggest thing, or the biggest impact that the Algae Biomass Organization has had in the last several years has been on the legislative front. So we finally, in 2018, algae was part of the U.S. Farm Bill, and so we're now recognized as a crop, and we're eligible for things like crop insurance, which is going to be important as this industry continues to grow.
Wow.
All right. Hey, Rebecca, my name is Chris. A warm welcome to the show. I'm that third seat warmer that Rob was referring in the intro there.
And a darn good one.
So you're lucky my mic wasn't on. All right, so I mean, a great background there. So let's get into really, the theme here, and maybe you can start by giving us a little background about the subject, right? We hear about algae and slime and all the talk and the chattering is that it's promising and it's long term. It's a good source of biomass and oil for foods and fuel and other products and things like that. And we see lots of different companies, startups coming around, right, to make ingredients for all the things that you just mentioned, like energy drinks and nutritional supplements, vitamins, and all that sort of stuff. Cooking oils, mayonnaise, and a big part of animal feed is as well that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later, as well as it being a potential energy power source, right, or for fuel, and soil health management and other ways to help manage water resources. So maybe the best way to start is right at the beginning and have you explain to us what exactly is algae. How is it formed and what are the different types?
Sure. So algae are basically photosynthetic organisms. So they take sunlight and CO2 and they make biomass and energy out of those two things, but they differ from plants in the fact that they don't have real roots, stems, leaves, or flowers. So you'll quite often hear people actually talk about algae as plants because they're very closely related, but just with this important distinction around not actually having sort of the infrastructure, if you will, of terrestrial plants.
No pistils and stamens.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
No roots and shoots, yeah.
A single-celled photosynthetic organism.
So you bring up a good point. There are actually microalgae, which are the single-celled organisms, but there's also macroalgae, which are large, complex algae. Kelp, for example, all your kelp forests. Kelp is a type of algae. Seaweed, seagrass, sea grape, many types of the edible seaweeds that you see, especially in Asian cultures, are actually a type of macroalgae. And so we're constantly surrounded by algae, really. We just don't always realize it.
Right, and it's got the great potential for the Earth. So we understand that it is the major contributor to oxygen on the planet.
That's right. So at least 50% of the Earth's oxygen comes from algae. It comes from a specific microalgae that's found in the oceans. And I always tell students, take a breath. Now take a second deep breath and you thank an algae for that.
Thank an algae.
Thank an algae. Let's put that on a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Is there any harmful effects of algae?
Well, so like all groups of organisms, there are ones that produce toxins. Out of the hundreds of thousands of species of algae that are out there, a handful of them produce toxins, and they do have algae as a class in some areas of the world have a reputation as a nuisance organism because of things like red tide, right? Or algae blooms in the Great Lakes. And I feel that that's a little unfair to the algae because they wouldn't be there if there wasn't a high density of nutrients in those bodies of water. And so algae are not really the problem. They're the symptom of the fact that our bodies of water are contaminated with very high levels of nutrients, in particular nitrogen and phosphorus.
So the things that we read about in in Florida, for example, with the blue algae, that's not a good part of it, right?
That's right. So there are toxic blue-green algae, and they produce a type of neurotoxin. But again, we're talking about a few bad apples among, or a few bad algae, if you will, among hundreds of thousands of species that have been characterized. And it's just because they are toxic, and they cause issues, they get a lot of press, versus the many species that are being eaten, that are being grown for various uses, which you talked about, around the world. Those don't get so much airtime.
Yep. Well, bad news is what people want to hear about. They don't really want to hear about it. Well, is that true? I mean, turn on the news at night. What do you hear? Do you ever hear really a good story? Only at Christmas time.
Only from you.
Only from you.
Yeah, I hear good stories from you. But I explained this algal bloom badly once. I would love for you to explain the process by which people hear there's an algal bloom in an ocean, in a pond, in a lake, and that's the reason it dies or fish die. But could you explain that, just a little, elucidate the nitrogen phosphorus entering the lake through really fertilizer runoff and what happens next?
Sure. So basically what happens is, because algae are so good at photosynthesis and producing oxygen, they produce a lot of oxygen. So the more algae you have, the more oxygen you create. And what that can cause is for everything else to die off, essentially. So you disrupt the ecosystem in such a way that the food for the fish die, and then the fish die, and then things that eat the fish die. And you end up with these dead, essentially dead bodies of water from the algae bloom.
Yeah. And that's what they show on the news, right? That's the bad part.
That's right.
Of it. But there is a positive side, right? Yep.
Yes. Well, so actually there are a couple of companies that are working on harvesting these algae blooms where they happen. They have mobile harvesting units. And it's a company called Bloom, and they're harvesting this algae biomass from these blooms that are caused by fertilizer runoff, and they're turning them into shoes.
Did you say shoes?
I did say shoes. You can make plastics and foam out of algae as well as other materials. And so while we're working on fixing the runoff issue and managing our fertilizer better, there are ways to clean these blooms up.
So now we're going to have a bunch of designer algae shoes coming on the market.
I'm meeting with Tom's Shoes next week. Maybe I should tell them. Buy one, get one.
We got a BOGO on Bloom.
Yeah.
Now there's an off question here. I've been researching. There's several different locations for these algae farms. I know you guys have yours in Texas. I think you have one near the border, near Mexico. Is that correct?
We do. We've got one in the Permian Basin in Texas, and then our second farm is in Columbus, New Mexico, which is right on the border, about an hour and a half west of El Paso.
And then I was reading about somebody who has one he's based in San Diego, but I think they have a farm in Hawaii.
Yeah, so that would be Global Algae. You're talking about Dave Hazelbeck, and they got their start there in San Diego, but their production facility is in Kauai, which is one of the islands in Hawaii. There are actually a number of farms in the U.S. Some other big producers are Earthrise. They make spirulina products, and they're in Calipatria, California. Cyanotech, which is on a big island in Hawaii. They're one of the largest producers of algae in the U.S., and they make spirulina and astaxanthin. And then there are a bunch of smaller farms, a few acres, especially in spirulina production around the country. New Mexico in particular, northern New Mexico, there are a number of spirulina producers. And then, of course, there's a lot of work going on in California and in Florida.
Now, with the Farm Act, are they and you eligible for any type of government assistance and research or any of that? Or subsidies?
Yeah, so not subsidies yet. What we're eligible for, the two big things that came out of the Farm Bill of about 10 items was the crop insurance. So algae was explicitly added under the definition of an agricultural commodity for purposes of federal crop insurance, which is a really big deal. It affects the ability of folks that are growing algae to get financing, for example, because there's sort of a safety net there for their crops. And then the second big thing was that the USDA has been charged to create an algae agricultural research program to help address the challenges in large-scale algae production to support the development of algae-based agricultural solutions. You listed off a very large number of things where algae has an impact, and all the things that you talked about, there are products in the market today that people can buy that come from algae. And if this is going to be really something that is impactful to the economy, that creates jobs, and for the companies that we talked about just a moment ago, to reinvigorate rural areas, we're going to need some help making this a large-scale agricultural crop program.
Yeah, as Robert introduced me, Kellogg's is a organic fertilizer company, and so I am in particular interested in algae's role in soil and in enhancing fertilizers and making them more effective to grow plants. So, and also dear to my heart is the protection of bodies of water. And so I know there is a role in protecting the toxic runoff from farms, wastewater treatment, et cetera. Can you kind of tick through the benefits and how algae does improve soil health?
Sure. So there's a couple of different ways that it can do that. And for your listeners, if they're interested in looking it up, a couple of different companies, Acellergy out of Texas, Algaternal also out of Texas, and Beam Biologics out of Arizona are all looking at soil amendments or improving soils, and they're each doing it in a different way. So in one case, they're actually using a live blue-green algae to re-nitrify the soil. And so if you can do that, then you need less fertilizer, for example. Then you have another method, which is that you grow the algae, and it's not live, you dry it, and the drying process kills it, but then that can be used as a soil amendment. And depending on the type of algae, you get a couple of different things that can happen. It binds fertilizer better, for example, holds moisture better. I apologize, I'm not a soil scientist. But it, like you said, it helps to, I guess, just make resources go a little further is the best way to put it. And so preserving the ability of the soil to support a crop, and then protecting waterways as well.
So it has so this is Chris back again here, Rebecca. So there's a couple of questions I had, and I know we've talked about how effective algae are at producing oxygen. Some 3/4 of the world's oxygen comes from algae, but it also has a role in capturing carbon in our environment as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Sure. So algae are the most efficient photosynthetic organisms on our planet, and that is to say that they're the best at taking carbon and turning it into biomass. And because of that, the recent surge in the early 2000s around algae research had to do with the intertwining of carbon capture and biofuels. And the idea here is that if you could grow specifically microalgae or certain types of microalgae to have them capture that carbon and then turn it into fuel, that we could have a liquid transportation fuel in particular that would be carbon neutral and potentially even carbon negative to offset some of the issues that we have around fossil fuels. Right. So the interesting thing that's happened is as these other products have come to the forefront in the last 10 years, that carbon capture idea is still there. Mm-hmm. And one of the legislative advances that we had this last year was that the update to the carbon capture and use legislation included biological sequestration. So now companies are actually eligible to get tax credit for doing things like providing CO2 to an algae facility and sequestering the CO2 in that way. Wow. And yeah, it's really amazing. Yeah. And I think that's going to be a big boost to the industry because the largest input that you have when growing algae is the CO2. And it makes no sense to get it out from under the ground to feed algae when there is an excess of it being put into the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, the way you explain, you know, many of the uses, right? I mean, it's actually a pollution control mechanism, if you will, right? I mean, it's a way to do that.
Yeah.
Capturing toxic runoff and utilizing that. Can it be, you know, do you see it a use for it in wastewater treatment facilities? That sort of an application.
Well, it could be used like for brackish water too, right? Brackish water is good for that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the Orlando Utilities Commission has got a very large project for wastewater cleanup utilizing an algae component. They've announced the project, and not a lot of details have come out, but that's exactly the idea, right? Is that not only can you clean up your wastewater and control some of these issues, but you can have a product out of that, and so you're not just creating a storage program, right? You're making something useful out of it. And my favorite term for this idea is ecosystem services. And so you're basically taking the best part of the ecosystems and using them to advantage to create things that people use, because we're going to continue to use all the stuff that we already listed, but then to protect our resources and to protect the planet.
Wow. Well, you know, because of the world's projected population growth and the increased need for protein we have, how can we identify more solutions to harvest the protein? I mean, is it true that algae can produce 40 times more protein per acre than normal crops while eliminating the eutrophication, and that algae crops use 30 times less water and 8 times less phosphate that protein has from normal?
Yeah, so it depends on the particular strain of algae that you're growing, but in general, yes, you use less of those resources. And because algae are grown in containers, essentially, in big ponds, there's no runoff. The other interesting thing about growing algae and the utilization efficiencies is that you recycle the water. So you take the algae out of the water, you can put that same water back into the pond or into your growth system and continue to grow algae with it so that you get very high utilization efficiency. So it's less waste, as well as all those things. I think the important part... Oh.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think the important part about including algae in this equation for producing protein is that it's an add-on. We're not looking to replace any of the existing systems. We're looking to extend resources. And algae is great for that because of all the things we already talked about. You can grow it on wastewater. You can grow it in brackish water. You can grow it in places where other crops don't grow, that kind of thing. So it's an additive resource rather than a replacement.
Just one last follow-up to that. How big is the current algae business, and then what do you see for the future?
So I think today, we're definitely growing. I don't have a current market value, but there are estimates that the algae industry as a whole will be upwards of $3 billion in the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, that's important for a number of reasons. It's this confluence of ideas, right, that you can make a profit while protecting the planet and while being conscious of the resources that you use and by sort of thinking outside the box. And algae's been around for a long time. People have been eating it for thousands of years, both microalgae and macroalgae, and we just haven't industrialized it yet. And I think that the industry currently is being very responsible in their plans for that industrialization. And if they continue to do so, then we'll see, hopefully, algae on everybody's plate every day.
Uh-huh.
I can't wait for my first algae burger.
You can look forward to that.
Yeah, but they are talking about
Sure.
Substituting meat down the road and replacing with an algae type.
Yeah, so that is for sure. I would encourage you to also think about the implications of using algae in animal feed.
Yeah.
As a Texas girl, I grew up eating beef and continue to do so, although I do so responsibly. And feeding algae to animals has health benefits both for the animals and then for the humans that are consuming the products from those animals. So there is a company that's a member of ABO. It's called Naturally Better Omega-3, and they make animal feed with algae. And what they see are eggs with enhanced omega-3, chicken, beef, and pork that all have enhanced omega-6 to omega-3 ratios. And that's going to be an important part of improving human health. So if we can improve animal health by feeding them algae, the knock-on effect is that you then also improve human health, again, while preserving resources and taking care of the planet.
Wow. That's amazing.
You got a wonderful future for ABO, the Biomass Association, Algal Biomass Association. Is that right? Algae Biomass Association?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
I think I saw this ingredient on a new product at Costco. It was like a coffee additive, like a creamer made by Laird Hamilton, and it talked about the algae that had gone into the process and increased the protein and the benefits to put it in your coffee.
So this is going to be like the new tofu of the...
Kind of, yeah. Yes. It tastes good, I have to say, and it really was a nice creamer for my coffee, and it added protein. It was like really amazing.
It's just. I agree with you. I think the world, when I traveled overseas to Asia and other places, and some of the foods that are there, people here would shudder or just turn off automatically because they're not used to it. It's a different culture of things, but they need to try stuff because. The new congresswoman from New York is trying to outlaw cows and get them out of the way because of their flatulence.
If you feed them algae, do they have less flatulence?
So they actually do. It is a myth that it's cow flatulence that's the problem. It's their burp. Same thing, different end. But there are studies that show that if you feed them certain kinds of seaweed, you actually decrease their methane emissions by as much as 40%.
In the same cycle as grass-fed, right? Is it similar?
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had heard the same thing, and this is a promising thing for climate change and for holding the cost down of some of the crazy proposals there are for reducing the temperature of the planet by point something degree. I see that the greenhouse gas levels proposed by the Algae Biomass Association might keep the greenhouse gas levels to within 2 degrees of a climate change target.
Yeah, and
Is that true?
I think, well, so some of those studies that are out there are extreme, given that, the same studies that say that we need to decrease the emissions by X amount per year, say we have 10 to 12 years to do that. If you think about replacing 40% of the world's animal feed in the next 10 to 12 years with algae, that's a pretty large task. The industry just isn't there yet. That's not to say that we're not going to get there, but from a timing perspective, I think that we need to explore every option. And the other thing that I think is important is that instead of being divisive and saying, no beef or no whatever, that we need to say, well, how can we do this in a more collaborative way? Because people's livelihoods depend on the production of beef. To use your example of outlying cows for this purpose, and algae is part of a very large set of solutions. And I think that if we look at it as a set of solutions rather than this is the solution, we'll get a lot further, and we'll come much closer to meeting those deadlines and decreasing the emissions.
Are you working with any universities on projects like these?
So Qualitas specifically is yes, and many algae companies do. And in fact, I'm just home from Toronto this evening, talking to a whole set of Canadian researchers from universities and private institutions up there about the work that they're doing. The algae community in general is very collaborative, and we do try to work together. There's a whole cycle of basic and applied research, so things that are interesting and filling in gaps in knowledge that then lead to applications to help us do things like reduce emissions from animal production by improving their diet, for example. And so having that cycle of going from basic research, filling gaps in knowledge, to a commercial application and back again is actually a very critical component of making sure that the algae industry continues to grow.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting. I mean, it looks like as an industry, right, this is right at the very, very beginning stages, right, a new agricultural industry sector. So based on, on algae cultivation, what in the last couple of minutes here do you think is what the future hold for algae production?
I think the future is very bright. I think we're going to continue to see algae in all kinds of things. If you go to your local Target, for example, I'm a Target shopper. If you go to the beauty aisle, there are whole sections now of beauty products, skincare products, hair products that are being marketed as seaweed, as algae containing, and anti-aging properties. You're going to see it more and more in food. You go out to restaurants, and people are going to have both macroalgae and microalgae on their menus. And as we are sort of breaking past the bad or negative news cycle around harmful algal blooms and having more programs like this where we talk about the benefits of algae, I think consumers are going to start looking for it. And the more consumers look for it, the more successful that will be.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on, and I sure learned a lot even researching it, and I'm glad Kathy was here to help us out, and Chris, and it was wonderful.
Sure, it's terrific. Where can people find out a little bit more
about your company?
So our company, if you go to qualitas-health.com, you can learn all about us, but I would encourage people to go to algaebiomass.org. And you can learn about all the algae companies that are doing great work, especially here in the United States.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. Welcome back to the U.S. and we love your giggle. We love that, and especially what you taught us today. So thanks a lot, and we appreciate that. And thanks everybody for tuning in to listening to the Water Zone tonight. Again, thank you very much to Kathy for joining us.
Thank you, Robert.
We appreciate
Thank
that.
you,
Chris, as
Chris.
always,
You're welcome. Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here, and you're part of the team, as you know.
Yep.
I guess I have to start paying you now, right?
Yeah. What, you get paid for this?
Oh, no, you didn't get paid. I forgot. Anyway, everybody remember, have a great week, and the most important thing you all have to do is think blue. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Talk to you next week.
Good night.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5